I'm Mark Molloy. I'm the principal of Cascade Strategies, LLC, based in Winchester, Massachusetts. We are a government affairs firm that specializes in highly regulated industries, whether it's transportation, healthcare, or environmental issues.
Hello, Mark.
Hello, Jodi.
I love this because there's so many things I'm going to talk to you about and I'm going to ask, but I want everyone to know who is Mark. So before your company, where did you come from? Where were you, the schooling? Like, who are you? And then we'll get down to the, what do you do?
Fair enough. I am, born and bred from Maryland, as a matter of fact, Silver Spring, Maryland, which I then went to college in upstate New York at Hamilton College, which was a fantastic education because one of the things, my major there was classical languages, Greek and Latin. So where you look at someone, you say to yourself, well, what do you do with Attic Greek and what do you do with Latin? Well, you either go teach it or you try to use it in some other way in life. So I went to law school at Boston University School of Law. And I'm now old enough to admit that I actually followed my wife, who had gone to business school at BU the year before me. When I was younger, I might have denied that. And through law school, I had a concentration in healthcare law. And having worked in a big law firm and a small law firm, I realized I wanted to be more involved in policy. And so coming out of law school,
Whoa. You're just going, you're doing a fast forward. We're going to like a speed through it. We are not speeding through this conversation. This is full on. Because you said something where you're like, yeah, school. And I followed my wife. Huh, really? Did you think you were going to slide that back in there without me noticing? So let's just go back a little bit more. So you were from Maryland. I mean, there are amazing schools all over this country, all over this world. How did the Maryland kid end up in Massachusetts? Like, what here?
The Maryland kid ended up in Massachusetts in large part, my mother and father. My mother grew up in North Adams, Massachusetts. So for those of you not familiar with Massachusetts geography, it is probably the northwesternmost point that you can go in Massachusetts. And my father grew up in Arlington, Vermont. And they had a wonderful love story of the fact that they met at UVM, at University of Vermont. They went down to DC. My father did law school first, then my mother got tired of doing his work for him and, was one of two women in her law school class and became a lawyer as well. So me going to law school is a bit of the family tradition because I am the baby of 5 children. And my oldest sister went to law school as well. And everyone else said, no, we're not doing anything with law school.
How was it like being raised in a family of just, it was law every day, you're drinking it, eating it, just like engaging it with it. And your mom being one of, did you say one of 3?
One of 2.
One of 2 women at the time in law school. I mean, obviously our Ruth just passed away. And it's just so amazing to see what she had done and how she was one of the very few women at the time. So with Ruth being in the ecosystem and your mom being in law school, your dad being a lawyer, your mother doing all of the work for your dad, which I don't know what that means. So you have to tell me what that really meant. Growing up in that atmosphere and you're the youngest, I mean, there's just so much going on there. So you can't just think about the work yet. You have to explain the dynamics of what you are being raised with.
So Jodi, this is an entire separate conversation that you and I can have. And frankly, people would probably enjoy it. First of all, when you grow up with 2 parents who are lawyers, you've got to have a really good story for why you were out late. They'll punch holes through it in a heartbeat. And then the other interesting thing is both my parents, and you mentioned RBG, who had a great commitment to public service. So did my parents, actually. My parents, to their credit, my mother worked at the Department of Commerce for 40 years. Eventually becoming the head of, she was the director of the Office of Economic Policy Analysis. And then my father actually worked on Capitol Hill for a long time as minority counsel, as part of my minority counsel team for both the Senate Commerce Committee and then I believe the House, the equivalent of the Commerce Committee on that respect. And they both had this idea that they wanted to use their law degree in the most impactful way possible. A little side note, I don't want to blow your mind on this one. The interesting piece is that my father, alcoholic, divorced him. They divorced for 13 years. They were divorced. And then after 13 years, they got remarried to each other.
I love those kind of stories.
And the interesting piece of it is my father realized with his law degree and everything he had done on the policy side of things, he said, you know what I really care about is helping recovering alcoholics and drug addicts. So he would say, I would be remiss if I didn't put in a pitch to the fact that those who are interested, there's an organization called Oxford House Incorporated that my father has started up. That was a reflection of his experience of when he was in recovery and they needed a place to go after the halfway house was kicking him out. And there was a local priest who said, you guys need to stop whining. Why don't you all live together? And they basically found that living together, recovering alcoholics and drug addicts, by pure peer pressure, would prevent each other from drinking. They started with one house. My father, it kind of grew a little bit organically. And then my father committed himself full-time, started up Oxford House as a nonprofit organization. And there's now over 2,000 across the country. And their success rate, DePaul University studied it, their success rate is actually around 70% for sobriety. Your average program is about 40%.
Well, think about it, the accountability. I mean, everyone knows if you're going to do something, you want to find the partners in crime. You want to find those partners where the being accountable to yourself is just, it's easy to let yourself down, but it's not. I mean, I'm a runner. I literally have set up days where I have friends that I run with. Mm-hmm. I do it because I will not let them down, but that bed is nice and warm and cozy. I'm not getting out of bed. But literally that's one of the things where the program works, because your dad set up for success. When you're with a group of individuals that are in the same cluster and the same situation, it's a win-win situation.
Hundreds of thousands of people have been through Oxford houses and still remain. One of the beauties of it is that they basically don't kick you out. So you are there as long as you want to be there. And every house is run democratically, self-sufficient. It's not run by my father used to say, and he maybe still does, it's like having the inmates run the asylum, but there are no social workers in there. There are no professional staff who's sitting in there saying, oh, you must do this, that, whatever. Yeah. They set up the structure. You 6 to 12 people or 4, however many people are living in this rented house, no one owns a house. You are there to support each other and you follow simple rules. You live by the house rules, you get a job and you pay your rent and you don't do drugs and alcohol. And if you do, awesome. You're out. And it was a powerful message. And I kind of bring this back to the fact that would not have been possible, that growth. And for me witnessing it without the watching my father do it, but most importantly, watching how my mother raised us despite everything that was going on.
Well, that's so she's a lawyer, which again, so she's a lawyer at this time, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep. So she's a lawyer at this time, 5 children. I'm just going to keep saying the 5 children. And so you're in a household, you're trying to raise really well-adjusted kids in a very unique circumstance. And I'm a lawyer and I'm very little. So how was it for her? And how was it for her balancing that whole entire concept of I'm a career woman. I mean, this is my passion. This is my love. I'm helping society, but yet I have 5 little society people in my house and I want to make sure that they're not part of the problem.
Expectations. She made very clear as to what her expectations were for us to do well in school, to be responsible, that if she wasn't around, that you made smart choices. And let's be honest, I'm the baby of the family. So I had the benefit of having some great siblings, or I do have great siblings, who just really would look out for you and really set good examples for how you behaved and how you didn't behave in life. And there was nothing wild and nothing wild or too crazy. There's any family, Irish Catholic family, there's always going to be something. But I was very fortunate that both my parents, despite everything that happened, were loving to the children. They set the expectations. And then I was lucky that my siblings, you had the normal here and there give and take of what happens with any large family. But in a way, and my oldest sister always jokes about this, it has helped establish us in all of our careers that we are very patient and that we work towards consensus no matter what it is we're working on, because that's how you used to have to do it.
Well, I was going to say that whole entire concept of who's going to be in the bathroom at any given time. Yeah, I mean, I figure when you have like a lot of siblings, especially girls in the family, you have to know that the rule of thumb of like, okay, how am I going to navigate this one?
Right, exactly. That's exactly it.
All right, so now you're growing up in this household. Your sister has become a lawyer. And what's the age gap between the oldest and the youngest?
So the age gap between the oldest and the youngest is 10 years. So she is legitimately a decade older than me, and she was the first one of us, to go to college. Among the siblings, and then she decided to go to law school, and she went to Catholic University School of Law, and then I think she felt the same calling too. She worked in a small firm, and then she found herself. She actually now works for the federal government in a job that she loves, and is a interesting job. Is that she is kind of a chief mediation person, in her role with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission in the portion of the, obviously it's not just one mediator type thing. It's, I believe that she works on hydroelectric power, and one of her roles is mediation, and she loves it. And she says, when she sits everyone down, she says, look, folks, we're going to agree to disagree on certain things, but we're always going to treat each other like family. And there's going to be things that sometimes we're not happy the other person has said, but we're going to figure it out here in the room.
Words of an older sister in a household of, again, 4 younger, which is a big deal. I think that is, it was a great testament to, again, the way that your parents raised you, and for her to have that mindset, because being an oldest of so many other younger siblings, it's overwhelming because you tend to be that second mom. And so to be able to go into the field of the family, and then to be able to have a position that she loves and she does it well because of the way she grew up, it's amazing. Right. Was she, or was it your parents? I mean, so yes, law is in your family, but was it your sister, or was it your parents that really push you towards I'm really loving this, and I really am going to use you as my guiding light?
So one of the things I would have to say it's all 3 of them, and frankly, a number of people in our lives. The thing that I always tell anyone who's thinking about a law degree and whether to go to law school is you can do anything with a law degree. If you really break down what a law degree does, is it teaches you to write well, it teaches you to speak well, and it teaches you to research. And that is a skill that is valuable anywhere, from the corporate, the big, Fortune 100 on down to the small nonprofit. Those are skills that you really have to be successful. And, one of the things that, being a classical languages major, you either have to decide to go to grad school, for classical languages, because you need to get an advanced degree on that. Or you can go to law school, and you still can work with your love of language, and you can still, frankly, what law really is translation. You are trying to translate it for people. You are basically trying to say, hey, this is what the judge was saying when he or she wrote this opinion, and trying to put it in terms of, okay, what do we do about it on that next regard? So the great thing about law school that I loved, and I got to see it through the example of how my parents did it and how my sister, and eventually, my brother-in-law, and eventually one of my sister-in-laws, is just you can do anything with it. And that was the excitement for me, because I'm not going to lie, coming out of college, I wasn't one of those people who knew, oh, I'm actually going to become a lobbyist. That was not something that was ever on my radar at that point.
All right. So now you come to Boston. You are in school, and where and when did you meet your wife?
So I had met her in college. I was actually very fortunate that she being a sophomore, looked kindly upon a first year student who would generally, every time I passed her, I'd smile, and we were in art history together. And I remember talking to her one time being like, oh, you hold your pen funny. And this is a big lecture hall, Jodi.
I'm sorry, you did not say that, did you?
I was young and dumb. I'm slightly older and dumb still, but nonetheless, that is what I did say.
I'm sorry, but it's a line. It's not a great line, but it's a line, and it works.
It was the truth. It was the truth. If you ever see her writing, you'll think to yourself, well, not the best first line, but he's right. She holds the pen funny. And, we were very fortunate in the fact that, we had a mutual friend who basically was like, okay, enough of this YouTube playing around. You should go on a date. And we dated through college, and we got married after law school. And I continue to tell people, she is by far my better half. And we all have those friends who you meet in life and you think to yourself, how is that guy with her? Or how is she with him? That type of thing. I'm that guy who they say that about. I have some good attributes in life, but let's be honest, people will sit there and be like, hey, good for you.
Well, all right. So one day I look forward to meeting your wife, and I won't say anything, but I just want hey, by any chance, could you just write me a note? And I just want to watch, if nothing else, just that part. So then you guys are married. what happens next? Like, where do you go? How does your career kick off?
So my career kicks off. I actually was fortunate enough to work for a summer. So, obviously in law school, one of the things that they do is they say, hey, what do you do with your summers? And you really use it as an opportunity to figure out what you like and what you don't like. I had a great advantage of the sense that I was able to work in an unpaid capacity in my first real kind of law-related job in a law firm. It doesn't exist anymore. Eckert, Siemens, Sharon, and actually it does actually exist. Excuse me. Eckert, Siemens, Sharon, and a lot. The people I worked for aren't at that firm anymore. And it was a great experience. I got to sit and learn from some incredible legal minds, to see what it was like to be in a law firm. And I'm not going to lie, it wasn't for me. I mean, it was very quiet. They were obviously doing some incredibly important things and great work. But I kind of decided it wasn't for me. And then I thought next summer, I was like, maybe it was because I was in a big law firm. So the next summer, I got a job in a small law firm. And again, I was very fortunate, worked with great people, wonderful people who showed me different aspects of the law I'd never thought about before, and really challenged me in terms of how I viewed the law and how I wrote about the law. And I got out of that and I said, yeah, it wasn't about the size of the law firm. I'm just not cut out to be law firms. And in large part, it's because of what I was brought up under with my parents and watching what they could do with a law degree. They, my father worked in a law firm, my mother worked in a law firm at different times, but it wasn't something that either of them sat there and said, oh, I love this, I want to do this. And so I basically sent, a letter, my third year law school, I sent a letter to every chair in the Massachusetts legislature, not knowing anyone, that basically said, this is who I am, and here's a bit of my background, would love to have a conversation. And Representative, then Chairman Tom Kerr from the Cape sent me a response back that said, actually, we have an opening. Would you like to come in and meet? And Tom and I knew no Massachusetts legislators. And we sat down and we talked. And this, anyone who's ever met Tom Kerr will tell you, he's constituent oriented. He cares most about what's great for the Cape. He was a great legislator. And he had a policy side to him that he said to himself, you know what, I want to have people who are going to be pushing in different directions. And since he was the chair of the Joint Committee on Transportation, and some of my previous work was working on transportation matters, he offered me a job. And I was very fortunate. And I joke around because when I would send the salary surveys back to BU, they would occasionally used to ask, hey, how was your job? What are you doing? This, that, whatever. I was making 25.5. And I loved it. And I loved the idea that I had a job and I got to work on really cool policy issues. And anyone who ever has the chance, if you have the opportunity to work in the Massachusetts State House or any state house or any government body, do it. Doesn't mean you have to do it for your entire life. If you sit there and say, hey, I think we should be paying our staffers in legislature and Congress more money so that we can keep a continuity of people there for the experience and knowledge they have. But it was a great experience. And I met some incredible people, and it really was like a fire hose. There are so many issues that are going on, you can't possibly capture it all.
I think that you just hit it on the nose in regards of when I hear people complaining and whining and bitching about politics, and you have to be inside of it. A poli-sci class doesn't prepare you for the real thing. When I was Governor Romney's press secretary, by far, I took 10 zillion poli-sci classes. I worked in the media. I was really in it. Boy, oh boy, was it different when you're sitting in a legislative office, when you're having these conversations, when you're trying to get that information, you're line item by line item, when you're seeing people that are in the front of the State House and they're picketing. And I'm I go, what are they picketing on? It's one line item, but that one item is a big deal for them. Just to be able to get that story down, where being a press secretary, taking all that information, hearing from the people, creating events, talking to on behalf of the governor. Look, fire hose is front, back, it's coming in all directions. And so I always say 1 year, just 1 year in a legislative anything, in the governor's office, I don't care where, volunteering, it is a game changer because you can have a conversation at a higher level and you're not just reading someone else's words or regurgitating what's on the radio.
Right.
They're trying to figure out what it is, and then they're putting their own spin to it. Because again, I worked in the media. I get it. I did the spin on what was being out there. But when you are being able to get the balance of both, it puts you in a better position for anything that you do.
Right. And you worked for someone, regardless of politics, you worked for Governor Mitt Romney, who had very high standards, who wanted to make sure that the message that was put out was consistent, was responsible and, I would say defensible on the sense that there was a reasonable, there was a reason why they got to that position. And that's exactly it. Working in the State House, one of the things I loved most about it was about problem solving. A lot of folks will have this bad impression about state government or federal government or Congress or the legislature without really getting to know that people who are in that building, they're not going into that building to be obstructionists. They're going into the building. They went to get elected as public officials. People who work as staff, they want to solve problems. That's really what they're about. And frankly, I tend to agree. And people may laugh, but I actually think government is here to help you. There's that joke about, oh, we're with the government, we're here to help you. I actually think that's the role of government. And I'm excited when, you get to develop those solutions that works for government, that works for private sector, that works for the public sector. There's so many upsides to the role that government can play.
Again, the key thing is when it works extremely well.
Right.
It doesn't. I mean, again, I'm very lucky where I get to travel around the world, and I am invited to governmental meetings and there are countries that I'm like, wow. I mean, like what, like it's perfectly done. The people are happy, government is happy, everything is like wonderful. But I've also gone to countries. I mean, I'm from Haiti. I mean, I see it. I've lived it. I've been in the governmental offices in Haiti, and I'm like, wow, can't get out of your own way. Like, okay, this is the way it is. And so, yes, when it works well, it works great. When it doesn't, it is what it is. And it is one of those moments where it's a contentious moment for the people because they're like, we just want to get up, take care of our family, do our thing. And so to know that you are there doing what you do is fantastic. So let's get back to what you do, as in what happens next? Now, you're hungry. You're hungry and you went looking for the job, but how was it in your home? Because like your parents are not lobbyists. Your parents are in a certain bubble of law. Your sister, then you have a lot of in-laws. You decided to go this route. What was it that happened that all of a sudden you decided, I'm going to pave my own way?
Well, so part of what ended up happening in life is, and how I never thought I'd become a lobbyist, to be honest with you. I'd been, to your point, hungry about when I knew it was time to get out of the State House. I networked with a variety of folks and I thought, oh, I'll do healthcare law. I was like, I never will become a lobbyist. I won't do that. And then I sat down with a lobbyist. Someone said, you know what, Mark, your skill set is that of a government affairs lobbyist. You should really go sit down. And I sat down with a lobbyist who I really trusted, who he had been friends with one of my previous bosses. And he said, Mark, and it sounds like an obvious statement. He goes, in every profession, there's good and bad. And he goes, folks have thought, oh, no, this, that, and whatever about lobbying just because they may see it in the press or they may see it in the movies. But 95% of the folks who are lobbyists are doing the right thing and trying to just solve problems. And it really was that aha moment. So I then shifted over into looking at lobbying, and I was able to get a job out of the State House with a firm that, kind of gave me a snapshot of one way to do it. And then, frankly, the very next firm I went to, I stayed for 19 years. Because it was something that there was a teamwork, a core d'esprit, and we worked with a wide variety of clients. I always joke about the idea that a lot of lobbyists are ADD. And when you have a wide variety of clients, it's great. One day you're working on the environment. One day you're working on transportation. One day it's public health. The next day it's on tax and revenue issues. And it's fantastic. I mean, you always kind of have something that's going on that you're like, wow, this is exciting. This is engaging. I was fortunate from my family's perspective that I never had to explain to someone, oh, I became a lobbyist because of X, Y, and Z. I would say my family understood. Growing up outside DC, you understand the role that lobbyists play in life. You understand what government relations is, government affairs. So there was never anyone in my family who was like, my God, why are you doing that? But that it's very different. Many people grow up with different types of things. And I tell everyone, if you're going to get into lobbying and government affairs, recognize that it is something that some people in society just haven't gotten there yet to accept what the role of lobbying is. And I frankly think it's a role of every lobbyist to explain, look, I'm there to basically be a translator, to be a facilitator. What we talked about before in terms of translation. I'm there to try to take an industry's message and make it into a digestible piece that a legislator or staff can understand, because various industries just don't speak the government speak or legislative speak, and you need to translate it and put it into principles and concepts that government says, we value that. Job creation, we value that. Increased public safety, we value that. So that was something that for 19 years I worked in a firm And then finally, and with no disrespect to the people whose firm I just left, I kind of had that moment where I was like, I'm approaching 50, just a couple months from now. And I said, I really like working deeply on client issues. And so I put out my own flag, and it's scary to do it in a pandemic, but it's also very exciting because it's now that moment that I can sit there and say, hey, I can work with my clients at an even deeper level. So it's exciting.
Right. So I have to say, I love that being a lobbyist is like being a reporter. We have a transferable skill, marketing, reporters, lobbyists. We can be in any bubble, and we can actually, and our jobs are to share the stories.
Right.
Jobs are to share stories where most people would never, most people don't know what a lobbyist is. They don't see lobbyists. They see the government, they see the people, and they see the complaints in between. They don't understand that there's a translator in between. And so I think that's one of the things where, same as a producer, as a marketing person, people don't see us. We're right in between because we are transferable and we're able to tell the stories in the most gripping ways, to make sure that both sides are understanding, both sides are finding ways to come together to get the end. At the end of the day, everyone should win. Right. You may not, like you said, you may not get all of what you want, but you should get most of what you want, that everyone walks away winning, which is great. Starting your own business. I always say you never want to waste a good pandemic. You never want to waste a good crisis. You never want to waste it. And boy, oh boy, my friend, you came out. And again, when I started on LinkedIn, I'm like, what? I'm so excited. I'm so excited for you. So what did the family say? You coming from a big family, it's hard to even have a discussion without what did the family say? So what did everyone think about you just going off on your own?
I think, part of being a big family is that you do reach out to everyone. And it's funny because if you sat there and you said to me, hey, Mark, what's one piece of advice you'd have to someone who's starting up a business in a pandemic?
That's a question.
Oh, good. Okay, great. I'd be like, reach out to those close to you and around you and talk to them about it. Because a lot of what happens is, look, I've worked my life in doing this kind of narrow lane. I don't know anything about setting up a website. I don't know about, hey, how should I be looking at the marketing side of this, or, getting business cards, this, that, whatever. But when you talk to everyone, you realize what resources you have around you. And I think people sometimes just dismiss it out of hand and say, oh, well, I'm sure no one I know knows about X, Y, and Z. Well, you got to talk to them about it. And to your original question, my parents were very supportive. Family members were like, it's about time. You've been doing this long enough, Mark, you can do it. And that really helps. And probably most importantly, my wife, who basically said, you know what, I believed you can do this for a while. Proud of you, whatever you need, I'm here to support you. And you mentioned it to the kids too. And the kids are kind of like, so does that mean you'll be around more or less? God bless them. First question to ask.
You know what? It's all about me. It's all about me.
Right.
What is the hardest thing that you have found where you reached out to your community, but what is by far one of the most overwhelming part that you found thus far? So you've been literally, how long has it been now?
Since officially October 1st, but probably like mid-September that we were putting in the pieces together and doing the transition from the other firm. Okay,
so what has been by far one of the most overwhelming, and what has been the most gratifying of now you're on your own, but you have a humongously long, I want to say not trademark, goodness gracious, you have, what's the word I'm looking for? You're known. Let's keep it simple. I'm
glad I didn't throw out another word. I was like, this is one of her questions. Fill in the blank, Mark.
No, you're known. You've been known for quite some time. In Washington, in the State House. You're known for what you do, how you do it, your relationships that you keep. You open doors for so many different people. You're liked. You're one of the guys that people like a lot.
Thank you for saying that. It's funny because if you ask, to your question about what's the biggest challenge, I am in a very, it's service oriented, obviously, and it's very much about personal relationships. And if the State House was open right now, or a state agency was open, I could go up there and just wander the halls, talk to people, bump into people, and let them know, hey, I've started my own firm. Here's my new contact information, this, that, whatever, and really get to talk to them about what's going on in their lives. I actually like finding out what's going on in people's lives. I mean, it makes it a richer exchange when you're talking to someone and they're like, oh, hey, Mark, my kid just started baseball. They're a pitcher. And I love those little details about it, because you want to know what we're all just trying to get through each day to do what's most important to us, which, knock on wood, is our family and our friends, and really just being able to live. So one of the toughest things for me in this job is being able to get out and contact enough people, because frankly, right now it's relying on Zoom, it's relying on phone calls, and these aren't short phone calls. I mean, you're spending about a half hour to an hour on the phone with someone. Yesterday I talked to a legislator, and she and I talked for like 45 minutes, just because we were catching up on a host of things. But then she wanted, to your point and your excellent point, she wanted to hear the story of what led to me starting my own firm. And I want to share that with people and really kind of explain, hey, this is what I'm doing. And so I think that has been the toughest challenge, is being able to really connect with everyone. And I recognize, frankly, I make a list of, it's in no order of priority. It's just, these are all the people I want. And I recognize it's going to take a number of months to really reach out. And frankly, it could even be 6 months and longer that I'm really able to get to everyone I want to connect with. The most satisfying thing, though, has been two-pronged. One is, this has been a great kick in the butt to get in touch with people again, because we all have these great networks, and you look at it, LinkedIn, you look at it on Facebook, you look at it on Instagram, whatever the latest app is, I'm not sure whatever the latest app is, TikTok, I guess. And you look at all these supposed followers, friends, and whatever you have, but you ask yourself, when's the time I've been forced to actually reach out to them and talk to them? Because these are people who are friends and followers for a reason, because we like each other. And this occasion, one of the most positive things is it's been my excuse, my reason to call up and say, hey, I know we haven't chatted in a while, but I got some news I want to share. What's going on in your life? And that's been exciting, and that's been rewarding.
All right. So I had to take notes, because there are 3 things that I wanted to hit. So you said it so clearly and so well in regards to, I don't want to just talk business. I want to spend that 45 minutes. And you spent 45 minutes talking about like family and like the kids and things like that. Too many times people don't understand, one, who their target audience is. And once they know who their target audience is, they just just go for the pitch. I want to do business with you. That empathy is so much more important, to understand where they're coming from and what's happening in their lives, to understand if they're going to engage with you. Because if my kid is in a baseball game and they get hit by a baseball and like they just broke their arm, and I'm in the hospital and now I haven't slept because I'm like making sure that I have pain management, and then I have to sit there and go through emails, and then Mark calls me, am I really in the mood to deal with business right now? No, I'm exhausted because I was dealing with life. And so you just taking that time to like really do that, that's amazing. So I love that you mentioned that. The reconnecting, like me on Fridays, Fridays are when I have the moments of highlighting all you guys that are amazing there. You're doing a lot of great work as small business owners, as solopreneurs, as innovators. I love that I get to hear the story, the long form, not these like little snippets, hear the long form of what you're doing, which is amazing. And the thing that cracks me up, it's going to take me 6 months to get through my list. Dude, did I not just tell you you're popular? People love you. 6 months to get through, that's awesome.
No, I mean, and it's not because, and thank you. I should clarify that, and you're gonna kick me on this one. And thank you for those kind words. But no, it's going to take 6 months, not because my list is so long. I mean, frankly, there are tons of people who I want to reach out to, but I'm also trying to do client work at the same time.
That work in between, of course.
The client work comes first, and that's and frankly, that's something that has been imbued in my family through time immemorial. It's take care of the work, make sure that the people who are relying on you, that you're doing it and getting it all done. I kind of joke around about the fact that, it's when you really enjoy the work you're doing with clients, it's not that you're sitting there saying, oh, what, you want to do a great job. And that means digging a little deeper. It's like, I could send them off on this link and try to figure out what this new regulation is, but you know what? I can figure this out, and I can give them the summary, and I can get them the piece, and then they're going to be able to make a more educated decision, and it makes me feel good.
You're honestly like what we do is very much like we're constantly putting puzzles together, and it's the harder the puzzle, the more excited we are.
Right.
And so to hear you coming in from the law aspect, me coming in from the marketing aspect, I mean, coming together, and the client just is wowed, because it's not that they can't do it. It's just like, it's not their lane. It's not their lane. And they individuals that are really good in their lane. The pandemic hits, you start getting the buzz in February. You were at the State House, but you're hearing the buzz like straight out. The governor, and I mean, I remember I was in Mexico, and once I got here, I got friends that are still at the State House saying, like, go food shopping now. Governor's going to lock down the state. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what's going on? So what was it like for you then? And how has it, I mean, like, besides like the starting the new business, but how has that been for your family? How has that been in regards of, I mean, your connections are, you're walking through the halls. So talk about the buzz and all the way straight through to now.
Yeah, and I think no one expected it to be shut down this long. At least, there are some incredibly bright people and thoughtful people on Beacon Hill who maybe they knew, and they were like, actually, hey guys, a pandemic, you haven't really thought about what a pandemic is, but it's nothing that crosses our mind every day. Mm-hmm. So I think, we all figured out you'll be shut down for a couple of weeks type of thing. What I discovered is a couple things. One, remote work works. I used to be someone who was very much of a slave of, I got to get to the office because that's where I'm doing the work. The fact of the matter is, your lobbyist needs a phone and needs a computer and the ability still to communicate and have that network of people who they can reach out to both the client and to government. The second piece I realized is that it really challenges your Rolodex. And I say Rolodex, those of you who don't know what a Rolodex is, I just dated myself, but hey, just the other day I found one of my old Rolodexes and it was a little bit memory lane. But it really—
Wait, pause on that one. I crack up because I'm older than you, which is hysterical, but I'm older than you. And I still say Rolodex because I reference my LinkedIn as my Rolodex. So just so
there we go. But it really challenges you in a great way, actually. It's to your point, Jodi, you talked about running marathons. For a government affairs person to all of a sudden be like, ooh, here's a challenge. I've got to get this message to the person who I can't walk out into their office anymore. And I've got to figure out, how do I get their cell phone, or how do I get you probably have the email, but how do I get the cell phone? And then how do I make sure that I'm connected into this committee hearing or I'm getting to this chair? And it's a real challenge. I mean, yes, it can be frustrating at times, but also there's a real excitement to the fact that you're like, ooh, wow, it's really challenging me to step it up a bit. Yeah. The other thing I discovered through COVID is, if you didn't know what a lobbyist was or what a lobbyist could do before, when government's dictating everything you do every day, 24/7, you talked about the fact that Governor Baker, every time he went and had a press conference, there were a kabillion emails I needed to send out to different clients because everything he was saying was government is going to impact you this way. And then the businesses would sit there and say, Mark, that can't happen, or geez, I need this answered because I'm not sure if I'm essential or I'm not essential, or hey, what does it look like this way? And the role of the government affairs and the lobbyists became much more important. I say it is very important to every industry, any regulated industry or any industry that is new, that is probably going to be regulated at some point, should definitely engage with lobbyists because it is so important to have someone who's helped navigating you through those waters. And the fact of the matter is, the legislature, people are like, oh, the legislature must not be doing anything because they physically all can't be together. Well, they found a way around it. And they knew that they had to pass certain COVID related legislation that didn't just have to do with the pandemic. I mean, look at, and I use it, it's the driest example known to humankind, but look at the fact that they had to pass a law to allow for electronic notarization. Mm-hmm. And you kind of sat there and you're like, well, what do you mean? And you're like, well, notary basically says, hey, I'm the notary, which I am, by the way. I'm the notary. I have to watch you physically sign your document, and you have to show me your license or that involves very much being in the same room. Well, with a pandemic, you can't have that. So the legislature had to pass a law that basically said, hey, we're going to do electronic notarization. And it's things like that I always remind people, government continues to have a role both on the executive side and the legislative side, that it becomes even more important that you have someone who is listening and translating it for you and communicating your message back to those bodies.
Yeah, so one of the things that I love hearing from a lot of people that I know, they're like, Charlie, and I go, yes, I know, I'm calling the governor Charlie, sorry, I am, it is what it is, because his name is Charlie, I love it. I knew him well before, but I mean, he was like working from home, like, I mean, it should be a thing. And everyone's like, nope, it's never going to be a thing. And it became a thing where you're told you can't do anything, but it works. And so he's like, People are being very efficient. This is fantastic. So I think that was a benefit where a lot of things that you just mentioned, and many, many more were implemented because we had no choice.
I think a lot of folks don't give enough credit to both in the private sector, but particularly since I'm more focused on the public sector, how the public sector has continued to do a job and to do it exceptionally well. Yeah. I mean, I work with a lot of state agencies where they've gone virtual, and you want to know what the great thing about going virtual is? You now have participation from people across the state who otherwise couldn't have driven into Boston.
Exactly.
And the response time on people, when you put in an email and say, hey, oh, it's incredible. It's fantastic. And the fact now people saying, hey, here's my cell phone, just call me on my cell phone. And you recognize that you're seeing people be super responsive. So I really think that there is something that has occurred here that I think none of us knew when the governor long ago said, hey, we should provide tax credits for work from home. I don't think anyone really, we're all like, yeah, ideologically that sounds right, but no one knew how it worked. Now that we've seen it's worked, we should really be encouraging it with no disrespect to all the office and industrial park owners and stuff like that, because they have a role to play in this as well. But remote has seemingly, knock on wood, worked.
Yeah, it has its benefits. Where do you see this, before I ask you my last question, but where do you see us going now? I mean, like we are months, more than we ever thought, months and months and months into this. The numbers of the pandemic of COVID are starting to go up. So now people are looking into the fall, the winter, what it's going to start peaking. What does that mean? Do we go into full lockdown again? Do we go into partial lockdown? Who's going to go into lockdown? But things still, government still has to run. Government still has to run. People, whether it's the pot shops, whether it is the restaurants and the clubs this is their bread and butter. Individuals coming into a club, and I have a lot of friends that are club owners and they can't open because conferences. We are the mecca of all conferences for so many different things, life sciences. What happens now? What do you predict it to look like in the next couple of months during this? I don't know. I don't even know what to name it because we don't know what it is, what's happening. But where do you think we will excel at, and where do you think we're going to still falter and we're going to still need a lot of help?
I think we're going to. It's easier. Let me give what I would view the bad news first without having a crystal ball. I think where we're going to continue to falter a little bit is those professions and industries that rely on very much of the physically being there. The restaurants, the bars, the clubs, those things are going to, probably get back into the takeout model, if COVID continues to rise and there becomes a lockdown, and you're going to see that again. Take, for example, hockey rinks. At the end of the day, that's kids coming in and playing hockey. They'll have to kind of figure that piece out. So on those, I think we're still struggling through as to how to effectively do it. But I have to give credit, to the restaurants and those businesses, looking at the procedures they've put into place. Really impressive, really incredible. And you have to tip your hat off to how they're making it happen. And frankly, there's probably a path forward where they continue to make that happen. And it's to all of our benefit. On the good side of things, I will tell you, government continues to function. The legislature can still function. There's some little issues they're figuring out, and we're talking about it, with clients about, what's happening with the budget process. There's usually 3,000 amendments combined, Senate and House. 3,000 amendments, and the very nature of an amendment is that you're in the room talking to someone and trying to finesse it. How does that get done? The legislature will figure that out one way or another. But what we're going to see is the start of a new session, and I think you're going to see a lot of COVID-related legislation. You're going to see a lot of industries saying, hey, wait a minute, this is what happened. Let's think of what happens the next pandemic. What type of legislation do we need? And frankly, I think you're going to see a lot of industries who sit there and say, you want to know what? We were pushed to the test during the pandemic, and we showed we can do this. Take, for example, nurse practitioners. Take, for example, podiatrists, and full disclosure, I represent podiatrists. They have done an incredible job and really showing how they're reaching out to patients and how they're continuing to move healthcare forward. That falls under the broader umbrella of telemedicine. We need to be looking closer at that. So I think in certain aspects, we're going to see some real benefits come out of this. But I also recognize that there are going to be those difficult times where the in-person stuff, we're still working to figure it out.
Of course, I lied because I do have I'm looking at the time, but I also have one more last question before the last question.
Yeah.
It's an election year. An election year. how does your job of everything, like, I mean, who you represent, and I want to make sure that you like hit like the organizations that you represent before we go. But I mean, what does this election year mean for everything that you do and the people that you represent?
You know, one of the things that is always good, right, is an election gets people involved and it gets them focused on what government's doing. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it is atrocious that our voting percentages are what they are. It really should be close to, 90% of every eligible voter, recognizing that there's probably 10% that there's some reason that you just can't get around. But we should have much higher participation in government. One of the things that I think happens after an election, regardless on the federal level who wins, state level who wins, is you do see more active involvement. And then what you really see on the state legislature side of it is they really kind of recalibrate and say, okay, what's our priorities for the next 2 years? And I think that's the exciting time after an election, is to say, okay, what was just campaign rhetoric? And then what's the real issue we're going to all work on? And that's exciting to me, because in Massachusetts, there are a lot of initiatives that kind of really get vetted out during the election cycle. And then when the rubber hits the road, you start saying to yourself, okay, but what's going to be put into place? We know we need an economic development bill. Their legislature's working on one right now, trying to get a conference committee put together. But even if they get that put together, we then got to implement it. So what does it look like when we implement it? So there's an election. It excites me because people get involved. I don't like the vitriol on each side. I think people are just, they have become nasty to each other because they're not used to talking about policy.
It's shocking to me how disgustingly nasty it's been. But I'm like you, where people are so engaged, and I'm like, I understand that there's a far, far, far right and there's a far, 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 far left, but the ones that are in that bubble of not being the outliers, they're involved, they're paying attention, they're reading, they're engaging, they're having conversations that are not regurgitated from the media. Again, full disclosure, I worked in the media, I can say that, where I want you to like reference the media after you have formulated your own thoughts.
Right. That's, and I always use this example, right? And maybe it's because this is the profession that we've all chosen. You rarely ever see lobbyists yelling at each other when they're discussing an issue. They're like, oh, good point, this, that, whatever. And it's not just because, hey, we have to be nice to each other because it's a small town. I think it's because there is a emotion that is taken out. We certainly feel passionate about all of our clients and the issues that we're working on, but there's a little bit of an emotion taken out because we've seen how the broader universe works, and we recognize it's like a marriage. You're not going to get your way 100%, nor should you, because you're going to find it probably isn't going to work for the long haul. But at the end of the day, I think that really, if we can just get people to start saying, you know what, we're discussing the issues and we're relying at just what you said, on facts, and having a conversation based on facts, not what our opinion is, or, hey, I've really believed this. Wonderful. Love the fact that people come in with beliefs, but recognize that other people may have beliefs on the other side, and you can't dismiss them out of hand. You need to hear them, respect it. You don't have to agree with it afterwards, but you at least have to be civil and respectful in how we have that conversation.
Yeah, I've been told on many occasions that actually I had a coworker a few years back that said, I don't like you, but I respect you and I can't wait to be like you one day. And I'm like, I'll take that.
That's a great compliment. Absolutely.
You don't have to drink the Jodi Kool-Aid. All right, so the last question is, if you had a professional ask and a personal ask of anyone that's listening to you right now, what would be your personal ask and what would be your professional ask?
My personal ask, well, the professional ask is easy. If you ever hear of anyone who needs a government affairs lobbyist in Boston, Massachusetts, please consider Cascade Strategies. Would love to have a conversation, even to have a conversation to help you vet out whether or not you even need a lobbyist. On the personal side of things, I would say it's two. I'm gonna bifurcate your piece here. Is one, be kind and nice to each other. I don't care whether they are someone who is the clerical person all the way up to the elected official or one of the most famous people you ever meet. Treat them all the same, treat them with respect, be as kind as possible. Recognize that everyone brings their own story to what has led them to there in that moment of life. And to the degree you can, and I don't mean to sound preachy, we all have bad days. There are days when I sit there and I think to myself, I just can't, not today. But to the degree you can, is just be kind to each other. The second thing that I would suggest that would be my personal ask is help each other out. And one of the things I actually enjoy is when people call me up and they say, hey, Mark, can I pick your brain? I'm networking. I'm trying to get into this profession. Or geez, do you have anyone in your network? I'm trying to learn more about construction. Do you have any general contractors I could talk to? Full disclosure, I represent general contractors. I love that. And I would encourage that people really engage in that and do that as much as possible to help everyone kind of learn more about what they do, but help them get ahead. I mean, we talk about how do you find a job isn't always, what you read in the paper or what you read on LinkedIn. It's word of mouth. And the idea that of saying, and we're respecting and recognizing that all of our networks are bigger than we think and more valuable than we think. And recognize that if you can, and someone's looking for a job, say, hey, I'd love to sit down and talk to you, and then give them one or two people who they could then go talk to.
I love that. Well, I love, one, thank you. And I go, but I love that you just said, like, I go, check out the individual's network, because I always say to any of the companies I work with, if you get any great news, you got funding, you got a brand new big client, you got in the media, tell your family and your friends. They're like, oh, I don't want to bother them. It's like, it's just my work. I'm like, you don't know what or who your family and your friends know. Right. So right. the more you're able to communicate what you do to the people that are in your life that know you, the better. One, they're proud of you, and two, they can actually say, like, I know someone you should know. So I think that's like really fantastic.
And in defense of those, because I fall into that category and I don't like to really talk about those type things, it's really tough to kind of be like, well, I want to be really humble. I don't want to brag. So there's that fine balance of being like, hey, I'm really proud of what I've done or what this client has done. And the woo,
it's okay. I get the humble part, but you also cannot be found if people don't know that what you do.
True. Yeah. Very true.
If people don't know what you do, you can't be found. Exactly. You know what I'm trying to say. All right, so I'm going to do this one more time. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you,
Mark. Thank you so very much. I mean, like, this is like fantastic. I'm so excited that you're doing this. I'm very, very, very proud of you, though, just like getting yourself out there. And you are really, 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 really liked, because you're a good person. You're a good person. That whole entire shucks Irish Catholic kid shucks.
That's everyone in Boston. It seems to be half the population in Boston with the Irish Catholic kid shucks.
There's a lot of Catholics here. I mean, a
lot of Irish here.
Hey, Haitian Catholic. I mean, so like, yeah, there's a lot of us here in town. But I mean, I have to say, thank you very much for taking time and just like talking and just, you're one of my favorites out there. So I just really enjoy talking to you.
Thank you.
There's so much more to ask, but I mean, we're going to do that at the end of the year, the beginning of next year. I'm going to circle back with everyone that I spoke to and find out what happened. Like, what happened? How has it been? Especially for you, because it's going to be very, very interesting in this state. We're a Democratic state with a Republican governor. And, it's just, there's so much to unravel here. So it's going to be really interesting for you. And I'm very excited for you. And I can't wait to hear the backstories. Well, yeah.
What do you call it? And Jodi, thank you for the opportunity. I love the fact that you do this just to hear people's stories. And thank you for the opportunity to share my story, because it is, I'm living it every day type thing. And if it helps anyone to hear it and they sit there and say, hey, I'm like that guy, or even better, if they can be like, well, if that guy can do it, I certainly can do it. Well, then even better, hey, however it works. But I appreciate this opportunity. And I really am just so thankful that you thought of me to be on this, because I think it's a great opportunity to kind of hear everyone else's stories. And I have to tell you, I actually went through your catalog and listened to a variety of different stories, and it is amazing, your network. So thank you.
That the crazy people that I find, that I attract, and they still want to be friends with me, which is cool. Mark, thank you so very much. I wish you the best. And I'll be watching you, because that's what I do. I watch and wait what you do next.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.